Hello, everyone, and welcome to GRASP ApexAIR, a discussion we're going to have about technology we've designed to fully support air contract management and decision making. It is straight up, top of the hour, so I would like to wait for a few more minutes to make sure we have given an opportunity to all of the attendees, because there's quite a few that have signed up for this webinar. Make sure they have all had the opportunity to log on. So let's give it just a few more minutes, and then we'll begin our discussion. Thank you so much. All right, it looks like we have a full house. So again, let me welcome you on behalf of GRASP and our discussion specific to how best to manage your air contracts. My name is Joe Monahan. I am the Senior Vice President of Professional Services for GRASP, and with me today, I have a couple of other folks that are going to help us walk through the webinar. Brian Triplehorn is our Vice President of Professional Services, and he has a rather extensive background, having worked with the airlines, and gives us that sort of unique perspective of exactly what they're looking for. And Peter Sibio, who is our marketing person, and Peter's going to help us walk through the slides and kind of move things around. So a couple of housekeeping notes. You are right now, the participants right now are in a listen only mode. However, if you do have questions, please feel free to type them in the box on the right hand side of your display, and we'll be sure at the end of the presentation on Apex, we'll be sure we go down through those questions, and Peter's is going to help us do that. So Peter, if you wouldn't mind, let's go. We'll begin our presentation and talking about Apex. So right now, this technology is purely focused on how better to manage your air contracts. It doesn't look at hotels or cars. It is purely an air program management piece of technology. And part of what we're viewing, and the important the important pieces are, taking a look at particularly your historical spend, not only to review it by carrier, but by region and city pairs, as well as your fare mix. It's also very important that, we support the contracts that we've entered into with our airline partners. We've entered into those agreements in good faith. Airlines are typically looking for share shift, clearly, so they're going to incent you to move from American to Delta or Delta to United or whatever the share shift happens to be. So it's not only important that we understand where the share shift opportunity is, but can that carrier deliver on the number of seats and the availability? So we're gonna look through that. We're gonna look through this not only from an individual carrier perspective, but from an alliance perspective, and that includes both legacy and low-cost carriers as well. So next slide, please. Perfect, Peter, thanks. There's really three key areas, key areas in Apex. The one is dynamic analysis, and that is the ability to look at what you're doing now. So it gives us that ability to look at in depth. So we look at it, dynamic analysis as a giant filter. The first thing that Brian will show you is what your total carrier mix is, and then that funnel will close down all the way through the process where we go from your total carrier look to an alliance look to the individual travelers that make up a particular fare basis code. So from the big picture right down to the minutia. Most of our clients that are using ApexAIR spend a lot of time with dynamic analysis because it gives them a much more finite view of how they're actually spending their airline dollars. And then the second module within Apex is contract modeling. And that contract modeling is where we actually enter in the specific airline agreements. For us, we have worked with domestic carriers primarily and their alliances to bring a lot of those contracts in electronically. Otherwise, we do have to do some manual importing of bits and pieces of your agreements that allow us to manage those contracts. And then the third part is your contract modeling, if you will. And the modeling allows us to look at a share shift. What happens if I shift my business from one carrier to the next? Does that carrier have enough input, enough seats within a particular city pair to facilitate a change? So we look at that from a variety of different perspectives. So with that, rather than look through the rest of what we've got here, if we can just move on and let me introduce Brian Triplehorn again. Brian is our SME on the product. And Brian, please take it away.
Okay, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Let me share my monitor, hopefully. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that now. Joe, let me know if they can't. So as Joe said, we have kind of three areas to look at within Grasp Apex. Really four if you include the reporting aspect as well, but three different distinct areas. What we're looking at now is called dynamic analysis. And what I'd like you to think of this as a giant filtering tool where you kind of pour your data in at the top. So in this case, I have, now this is demo data for calendar year 2018. So you might see, some random airlines that don't exist anymore, or funny traveler names or whatever. But this is demo data for 2018, excuse me, I think I might have said 2019. Again, if you pour your data in at the top, so in this case we have 154,000 odd segments, 64.1 million in spend. The average fare is $415.09, and then the cost per mile is 28 cents. You notice if I hover over it, the numbers, if they're rounded, they'll give you the exact number. And then from there, we just start applying filters. So in this case, I've selected validating carrier. So we have a nice bar graph here. You see kind of the halo effect around American Airlines. If I shift that, click on Delta, you'll notice that all of this repopulates. So I can quickly, at a glance, see year-over-year numbers, 2018 versus 2017. Also the cabin and class of service. So I can quickly see, again, I've highlighted Delta, so everything below here is going to be right now on Delta. So economy is 10.2 million, and again, if I hover over, I get the exact numbers. Business is 4.65 million, a little bit of first and a very little bit of premium economy. And then even in these outer rings, it actually gives you the class of service, so Q, H, M, etc. As far as Delta's alphabet soup, if you will. You can multi-select in all of these. So if I wanted to see particular joint venture partners with Delta, I could come over here and click on Virgin Atlantic, Air France, and let's see if KLM, there's KLM, so click KLM. So then I have the 4 major transatlantic joint venture partners. So in this case, I don't know if you saw, but they move slightly. So everything below selected is for those 4 partners. There's top 20. I have several different ways to filter that as well, depending on how much data you have. I mean, if you're just looking for quick answers and you want your top 5 carriers, you could click on that and it'll quickly give you that, in which case you'll have a ton of others. If you wanted to, for whatever reason, eliminate the other, you could just click on the deselect other box, and then you've got everything as your top 5. That becomes important because so we have a bar chart. If I wanted to go to the heat map, you could quickly see my top 5 carriers in a heat map aspect, where the bigger the box, the bigger the spend on that carrier. So if I put the other again, obviously there's going to be a lot of other. You could also, with all of these, you can do a pie chart, which with 5 is okay. Once you get up into 20 plus, it becomes a little bit of an eye chart, but you can quickly see the lion's share, or it looks like about a 28% is on Delta. Here again, you can even multi-select within the pie graph if you want, for whatever reason. And then you can also do just a quick table. All of these are exportable as well. So you can click this icon and export them. But for now, we'll just go back to the bar graph, and I'll go back to Delta only. So here again, back to my analogy of pouring your data in at the top. So you have the 154,000 on the 64 million in spend. The halo effect around Delta means Delta selected. So this automatically updates as well. So of that 154,000, 40,661, or 26.3% of the segment count is on Delta. 15.8 million of the 64 million, or 24.6% of the spend, is on Delta. And then there's your average fare and your cost per mile. So moving down, I've applied other filters. So in this case, remember back, we've already clicked Delta, so everything below will be on Delta. So in this case, I have my top 100 city pairs. You can, if you were searching for a particular city pair, you can click the search box and type in if you're looking for a particular city pair. In this case, I'm just going to select JFK Heathrow. Maybe I'm looking to do a little bit of research on that. I can quickly see that that's my number 2 by segment spend, O&D on Delta. So 660,000 roughly, 4.2% of the spend, 380 segments. There's your average fare and your cost per mile. Okay, so now remember back, we've already selected Delta. Now we've selected just JFK to Heathrow. So that number is 380, 660K in spend, etc. You can also, I mean, if that's all you needed right there, for example, I could just click this kind of eyeball looking icon and it would quickly bring me up a report. Okay, it tells you date range, Delta, Kennedy, Heathrow, and then it gives you all of this, and I could just export that if that, if that's all I wanted right there. And I can either export my visible, or in this case, export all is fine because it's only 380 rows. So here again, we're on Delta, we're on Kennedy Heathrow, 380 segments. Maybe I want to add some more filters in, so I've added a filter for cabin. Overwhelmingly business class, 75%. You can quickly see that's obviously a business class market for them. 89% of that spend is in business class. And then maybe I need to know, well, what class of service exactly is on Delta in business class for Kennedy Heathrow. Well, I can quickly come in here, add a filter for service class, and then that breaks it out. So your number 1 is actually I, then C, Z, D, and J. But let's say Delta's coming in and giving me an offer in Z fare class. I can quickly see that 26% of that business class spend is in Z class. Again, if I wanted to export that report, I could. You can export from here as well, just whatever your preference is. And then maybe I want to break it down even further, the segment fare basis code. Well, I can quickly find, so if Delta's coming in here and saying, hey, I've got a great fare for you in ZN15, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's great, but I only flew that one time in the entire calendar year of 2018. So, of the 77, 73 were in this Z1 FMOUS. So maybe try to get them to discount that particular bucket, or maybe there's a compelling reason that they'd give and say, well, this new fare that I'm giving you, we believe you're going to use it, as much as you use the Z1 FMOUS for whatever reason. So you can do that kind of analysis, and you can go all the way down to travelers if needed, PNR, etc. So that's one filter. Each person that logs in has their own filters that they can build. So I'm going to go to just a bare one. So here's that same 154,000 if you remember from a moment ago. So kind of a blank slate. So now I can start adding components here. I can click edit set and start adding, I can name my set and then start adding components from here. But basically I want to show you the different selections that the system is capable of right now. So as far as booking, you can use validating carrier or alliance, segment carrier or alliance, low cost validating or segment carrier, cabin, service class, online versus agent, agent ID. Now some of these obviously are dependent on the data. If we don't have all of these, for example, if we don't get the reason code in your data for whatever reason, obviously you can't report on that. But if we have the data, obviously we can report on it. So record locator, reason code, segment fare basis, ticket designator, tour code, invoice number, flight number, nonstop. The system does have some limited rail capability. We're working on enhancing that, but so Acela Amtrak, et cetera, is if it comes across in the data, we can report on it or whatnot. So point of sale, ticket number, flight pass category, and detail. As far as contract monitoring, and we'll get to that side in a moment, I should back up and say dynamic analysis is all irrespective of contractual relationships. So it's just your data to be filtered on. If you do have contracts and we have them built in the other side of the tool, which I'll show you in a moment, you can actually report on them, report on that here as well, contract monitoring. So contract name, the discount, is it discounted or undiscounted, which is obviously always a important factor so that you can figure out, okay, how much of my Delta share is getting a discount. Now that discount might be 2%, it might be 40%, but it's getting a discount. And then versus how much of my share is not getting any kind of discount. Then you can do some analysis, obviously, as far as why am I not getting a discount? Is it a point of sale or a geography that Delta's currently not offering a discount? Or is it a low fare bucket that they don't offer discounts in? So that type of analysis is easy to do in this as well. Geographic, I can bring in market, bidirectional or directional, just the destination. If for some reason you're starting a new office in Timbuktu or whatever, and you need to find out that destination, you can do that. Custom region, each login has the ability to create their own custom regions. If you're headquartered in Kansas City and you need to know, for whatever reason, Kansas City to domestic, Kansas City to Asia, Kansas City to Europe, etc., you can build those custom regions in the tool so that you can see spend and do some analysis just in and out of that. And it doesn't have to be, you know, one city either. It could be, you could create your own definitions of domestic. You could create your own definition of Latin America or Asia Pac, whatever you want to do. Domestic versus international. The date, you can report on month, advanced purchase, day of the week, time of the day. Organization, here again, if you have different departments, different accounts, different sort fields, etc., as long as we have that in the data, you can report on it. And then obviously a big one sometimes is the UDIDs, the user defined. You know, if you have 100 different or 800 different or whatever the case may be, user identified or user defined fields, as long as we're getting the data, we can report on it. So quickly, let me just pull a couple and build on them. So let's say we want to build by alliance, and then we maybe bring in, let's see, market, and then maybe one more just for giggles here. Let's see, let's bring in point of sale. Okay, and you want to report on that. So quickly, you can see One World is your top alliance. Interesting because Delta was your #1 carrier, but One World's actually your top alliance, then SkyTeam, then Star, then non-aligned. And then your markets, and then your point of sale, and then maybe you want to say, oh, you know what, I messed that up. I need to put the point of sale above the market, so you can quickly just come in here, drag and drop, redo it, and it will shuffle all the data on the fly. So my One World, my top points of sale are US, UK, and then it kind of falls off a cliff to Australia, etc. And then you can, you know, whatever kind of nugget of data you're looking for. Maybe you're concerned about all the activities in Hong Kong right now, so I can bring up all my top city pairs out of Hong Kong, you know, whatever the case may be. So that is the dynamic analysis filtering tool. I know it's a lot to take in, and if you have questions, we'll try to address those in just a moment. But I do want to move on to the other sides real quick. So the contract monitoring piece. Oh, it always asks you, you know, you haven't saved that. Do you want to keep it? So which is a good thing. So the contract monitoring piece. So here, as Joe said earlier, we have worked with Delta and their partners, American and their partners, and United and their partners at the headquarters level. And if you see here, we have a little import contract icon. So you can actually push that. Well, we can get a feed basically from the headquarters level of those three carriers and all their partners for whatever they have loaded into, basically into their Prism system. And we can get a feed for that to kind of rapidly input those contracts into our system. We also have that set up with the GBTA template. So if you're doing a sourcing project, highly encourage you to get obviously the big three and their partners is a big chunk of it, but all the other carriers, maybe you're doing a random, maybe you're big in Africa and you need Ethiopian and then you need a couple other carriers. If you can get them to load their offer into the GBTA template, we can upload that as well, which saves a lot of time, turn time, obviously, when you're getting bids. So that will help us build. But I'm going to show you a couple of, again, these are demo contracts. I know the 6 discounts looks good. If you have, I worked on one the other day that there were about 340 individual discounts just on a Delta agreement. So I know these can get pretty intense. This is kind of a, just a basic one, just to demonstrate the capability of the tool. But basically, if we had to come in here and manually build these, so what I would do is I would enter the discount, well, edit the discount, name it whatever I want to name it. If it's valid for the entire length of the contract, you leave it alone. If you need to override, you have that capability. Is this a discount or a target? In this case, it's a discount. Is it a percentage? Is it a fixed amount off? Is it a fixed fare? So in this case, it's 15%. So I'd enter percentage, 15%. Whoops, and I accidentally clicked fix amount. So also, I do want to point out, though, if it's a fixed fare, we do have the capability to put in the fixed fare and then right here add a compare fare, which is valuable because sometimes, as you probably know, the compare fares either default to a wildly unrealistic fare. So if you got a Q fixed fare, well, you're probably not going to compare, you probably shouldn't compare that to a full Y, right? Walk-up fare. You should probably compare it to another, maybe the full Q fare, or maybe something in between that, maybe something, an M or something like that. You have the ability to put that fare in and get some realistic savings numbers rather than a Q fare of 200 being compared to a full Y fare of 1500 and says you're saving 1300 a pop when reality tells you, no, I'm not, right? So you do have that ability in the system, which is a good thing. So just showing you kind of how we build them if we don't have the a feed. In this case, we would define the overall market. So segment has to be between, in this case, the Delta hubs, Atlanta, Cincinnati, Detroit, Minneapolis, and Salt Lake, and country in list, Canada, US. So you have all these different modifiers that you can, so that you can bend and twist and make the discounts, make the regions fit, make the discounts fit. The point of sale must be US or Canada. And then to actually apply this 15% discount, it has to be validated on Delta, and the segment fare basis code has to start with F. And then, of course, in computer ease, comma is or, so F or A or J or C or D or Y. So if it meets all that criteria on any reporting, etc., it will apply a 15% discount. And then you move through and you add all the different discounts that you have. Again, I know 6 is probably unrealistic except for some very basic ones. Some of my customers have upwards of 500 different discounts just on Delta. We also have the ability, in case you're a person who would potentially load these manually, there is a rules library. So, you know, if you know you're going to repeat discounts over and over and over, you can add that to your rules library under your sign, and then everything's repeatable. So, you know, some of these are quite common. Domestic hub on Delta for those fares, domestic hub for those, and then the lower fares. Those are all pretty standard and repeatable, so you can actually save those to your rules library and come back if you don't use the feed. The other side of this I want to show you real quick is the targets, the target aspects. Obviously, that's important. I want to know how I'm performing on my contracts, right? So we obviously load the contracts in, and it's very similar to how we load the discounts. So again, the total target definition, or what I'm comparing against, segment is between US and Canada and US and Canada, but the segment is not between Delta hubs and US Canada, because this is the non-hub goal. And then what's the target share? Well, it's validating carrier is on Delta. And then the share of segment count is greater than or equal to, in this case, this is a share gap goal, which are used widely by domestic carriers. So we do have the ability to do that in the system. You can use, obviously, we do bring in fair market share, and obviously there's different modifiers. You don't have to use share gap. You can just use share of segment count. That's easy enough. I need 10% share, or I need 15% share, whatever the case may be. So in this one, though, we wanted to show you that it is capable of share gap. So in this case, it's a +5, or fair market share +5. So when you're going up here to look at how did I do on the, in this case, let's say the 7th quarter of the contract, which was March to June of 2019. Well, my actual share is 29. My target share was 27, which is, if you can, when you hover over it and the black box pops up, you can see the 22% fair market share +5 is 27. So you met that goal. And you can see the orange bar is kind of where the goal is, and you can see that moves with the fluctuation in the fair market share. Okay, so that is the contract monitoring part. In brief, I know it's quick, but I want to save time for questions. Let me go back to dynamic analysis. You don't have to do that, but I think it's just easy to see. Another side of the tool that I want to show you is some of the canned reports. Now, these are sourcing reports. So if I'm doing a sourcing engagement with a client, or, you know, I should back up and tell you as well, we sell Apex to direct corporate customers who want to, you know, take it to the next level and monitor their performance and kind of do it yourself type of programs. We do direct corporate where we kind of help, you know, do a little bit of consulting for them and say, hey, here's where you're not making share, here's where we think you can do better, etc. We have relationships directly with TMCs and with consultancies. Consultancies do, you know, sourcing projects for their customers, and TMCs do, you know, pretty much everything for their customers. So the customer list for this product is really everybody. So in this case, these are kind of sourcing reports. I'm going to show you a couple of the top ones that we generally run at the beginning of a sourcing project, or some customers just like to run them, you know, quarterly or monthly, just to see what's changed, etc. So this one is a popular report. It's top city pairs with FMS. So, over here, you look at it and you say, that's no big deal. I get that report, from everywhere, right? JFK, Heathrow, it's my top city pair. There's my spend, there's my segments, there's my average fare, no big deal. The unique thing about this report is this actually brings in, again, we bring in FMS, or fair market share. So I can quickly see Kennedy to Heathrow, no surprise, the fair market share leader is BA, then Virgin, then American. And then obviously you remember that BA and American are partners, so that well over, or over 50% fair market share is on those two partners. But then what you look for, what most customers look for, is dominant markets where they have a huge reliance, I should say, on individual carriers. So, for example, Heathrow, Newark, 60% on United, and then it kind of falls off a cliff. Boston to Heathrow, BA is 57%. So, anytime you're over 50% on fair market share, those are kind of dominant or hub type markets where you have big dependencies. So Newark, San Francisco is a big one, Newark, Los Angeles, etc. So that's just an example of a report. You can always export those, and they'll come, they'll run, and you can download them and check those out anytime you want. You can modify them. You can send them to Excel or CSV. Some of the other important sourcing reports, a little time check here, make sure we have enough time. Historic spend and support ratio is another popular report for customers, especially when they do sourcing projects. So this is one where it brings in delta, the spend, the segments, and then again, according to fair market share, what were the expected segments? So in this case, delta on all O&Ds, the fair market share is 18. So they expect 29,370 segments. We're actually giving them 41,642. So this is one that helps you kind of fight the battle of, I'm not making my goals, but I am definitely supporting you, right? So maybe we have an issue where the goals are set too high. Because I mean, if we're giving them 142% of fair market share, or 26 on an 18, we clearly are supporting delta. And if we're having trouble meeting our goals, maybe we need to have a goal discussion, right? Here again, American, we're 111% of fair market share. BA 133. United, if you notice, we didn't have a contract in the contract monitoring part. Well, that bears out here as well, because we're shifting share away from United. Now, they may come in and give you a pretty good offer to just basically get back up to 100 or a little bit over 100, which would be quite lucrative for them. So again, during a sourcing project, that's important to know. You can actually do these by region as well. So if you're a big global company and you're doing maybe perhaps just a European RFP, I could click intra-Europe, and I could click US, Canada. I mean, you can do multiple, or you can do just individual ones. Maybe I just want to do US, Canada to from Europe and run that. Those take a little longer to run. I'll kill it if it takes too long, but okay, so that wasn't bad. So maybe I just need to look for US, Canada to from Europe. In that case, BA, I mean, here again, I'm supporting the heck out of Delta. I'm 190% of fair market share. All right, so that's a couple of examples of some of the reports. The fair mix analysis is another one that customers really like. So this divides up the spend, the economy spend, the premium economy spend, the business spend, and the first class spend, and you can export that. But I think more impactful, here again, I can slice and dice this data. You know, maybe I want to know by point of sale or advanced purchase. How am I doing? You know, advanced purchase wise, I can run that, see, you know, 0 to 2. Economy spend is huge. We're really booking, it looks like we're really booking business 21 days out, 21 plus, 14 to 20, etc. And, you know, again, there's different, you can do that by region. There's multiple ways to do all of these reports so that you can try to find some important information, especially around a sourcing project. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you before we start taking questions is a little bit on the contract modeling. This we're still working on. Right now, the limitation of this, as it kind of chews through the data a little bit, the limitation here on contract modeling is we're only able to do one O&D at a time. Eventually, we want to get to where we can do, maybe I can bring in a contract term if they're like terms, you know, domestic to domestic versus domestic to domestic, and be able to kind of shift share, or even a you know, one city to domestic or one city to region, or whatever the case may be, and eventually, you know, contract terms to contract terms. As you can imagine, there's a lot of moving parts there. For example, Delta's domestic to domestic definition is quite different from American's, which is quite different from United's. So, you know, there's, again, a lot of moving parts to that the developers are working on now. But I just wanted to want you to be aware of that. So in this case, though, we will just really briefly look at JFK to Los Angeles. First thing I would do is click this show FMS. So then I can quickly see, okay, JFK to LA, the expected FMS, well, the leader is Delta, then American, then JetBlue, etc. I can already see I'm giving Delta a lot. I'm giving them 140% of fair market share. And I'm giving a lot to American. So I want to be careful about, you know, 40% expected FMS. Realistically, you know, we could probably grow that a little bit more. But what you want to be careful of is when you have really low FMSs. There aren't any here, but if let's say Virgin America, which is now Alaska, let's say that was down to 2% or something like that. Obviously, what you'd want to do, you would want to be aware of that and not give a carrier with only a 2% expected fair market share, you know, 40%. It's just unrealistic. It's never going to happen. So be aware of that. You can lock all of these in place, and then you can potentially, let's say we want to look at shifting share away from American or Delta. Whoops, excuse me, I clicked the wrong thing there. Unlock that, and then, you know, start playing with moving share toward Delta and see how that impacts all the financials, or move share away from Delta and see how that. So that quickly, partially based on the discounted fare for Delta is a little bit lower than American. It's going to start costing you money quickly. But you can play with those, shifting share to and from, etc. So that is an aspect that we're still working on, but I want you to be aware that it is in the tool now and will only be enhanced. So Joe, I think we're ready for some questions.
Great. Peter, can you help us with that, please?
Yeah, so we have 4 questions right now. We'll start off with Barbara Ruth Dolby, who asks, with regards to capturing the class of SVC information, how is it captured for carriers like AC who have the same booking class across all cabins?
And I was muted, I apologize. So let me go back here. So basically they're asking, well, let me find Air Canada first. Okay, and this is demo data, so I'm just a little leery of giving you blanket answers. But Peter, are they asking the booking class per cabin, or Joe, did you?
She asks booking class across all cabins.
Okay. So let's just check this out here.
She followed up saying fare buckets.
Fare buckets. I mean, if she's asking how we accomplish this, I mean, we have big tables behind the scenes, and then we have partners that help us divide up. I'm not sure I'm getting the question. Joe, do you have any?
No, to be honest, I'm not sure I understand the question as well.
I mean, Barbara, if you're on the call, feel free to unmute yourself and you can ask this directly as well.
Peter, why don't we go ahead to the next question, then we can always circle back.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. So this next one is from Dean Rostron, who asks, let's see. Is there an additional cost for this tool in reference to dynamic analysis, contract monitoring, and contract modeling?
Okay, if you're asking, is there a cost per module within the tool? No. If you're asking if there's a cost in addition to, and I don't know your relationship with GRASP currently, I apologize, but if you already have GRASP data, is there an additional cost to that? Yes. Hopefully that answers the question. But if you purchase Apex, you get dynamic analysis, contract monitoring, contract modeling, and all the reports I've showed. And obviously there's a lot more reports that I didn't show. So it's all one. Okay.
Okay, so let's see. Oh, sorry. He's clarifying that he was asking for the modules that were demoed.
Yeah, no, so, I mean, if you get Apex, you get everything.
All right, this next question is from Jackie Smith. She says, this portal looks like it's designed for a single corporation. As a TMC managing air contracts for multiple clients, can this portal filter for multiple corporations?
Yes. I mean, the short answer is yes. So where I showed by account, and I guess that all comes up in setup. So the short answer is yes.
This is another one from Jackie Smith. After importing a contract, can it be used to analyze past data so procurement can show what would have been saved and create a projection at the onboarding of a new airline partnership?
Yes. Yeah. So what you would do there probably is clone the contract and set it up to whatever the previous dates were, or whatever, and then we can report off of that. So you can, yeah, you can kind of mirror what would have been type analysis. And then there's also contract comparison reports in here you can run to say, you know, let's show my American contract versus my American proposal, etc. So there's a couple different ways. And then of course you can also do a lot of analysis here in dynamic analysis to show contract A versus contract B and how it affects different O&Ds, geographies, etc.
Okay, we have another one from Barbara Ruth Dolby. She asks, if we have numerous clients with their own contracts as well as TMC specific contracts, if we are looking for an overall analysis, will the report specify which contract was used, the client specific or the TMC?
That'd be in setup. I mean, I guess the short answer is yes, we could accomplish that. It's just a matter of entering the contracts and then reporting on it. I'd probably report on that here in dynamic analysis, doing discounted versus undiscounted, and just reporting off of, because eventually this will show. It takes a few minutes. It'll take a minute to chew through that data because it's got to apply all the contracts. But the short answer is yes. It's just a matter of, that sounds like something we'd have to address in setup. So let's see. So there's discounted on, I think I had Delta. Okay. And then again, it's chewing through the data now, but it'll tell me which contract applies by, whatever I'm filtering on. So in this case, again, it's, somewhat basic because we only have two contracts. Here's the Delta Domestic and the Air France Delta KLM Transatlantic. But then you can imagine if we had several more that apply, it would show that as well. But again, that's a lot of these are setup questions. It just, how unique the project is.
Okay, and lastly, did you guys want to return to Barbara's original question?
Yeah, we can try. Let me go back to. Okay, as Air Canada. Let's see here. Let me get rid of. Whoops. Let me get rid of market. See if we can find any that are. Let me go to table here. So VQG. I mean, what she may be asking, so like, for example, and this isn't necessarily Air Canada specific, but let's say it's a Q up fare where they pay Q and ride an A, and the answer to that question would be yes, we are able to see that in the data, where in my example there, the service class would be A. That's more of a Delta thing. So I don't see any there. So if that's the question, yes, it's capable. Otherwise, I'm just kind of struggling to see. I don't see any differing ones.
Otherwise, we could just call her. We can call her directly and kind of have a conversation over the phone.
Okay.
Right. So here's one. I mean, again, just showing the difference. So this is service class Z or Z, but the fare basis is J. So again, if that's the question, yes, it's capable of doing that. I'm not 100% sure I'm answering her question, but again, we can reach out to her.
Okay, perfect. Well, that's it for the questions. So I'll let you guys take it away.
All right. So from the GRASP perspective, we appreciate your time. Time is the most valuable resource we all have, and the fact that you'd spend a few moments with us here this weekend or this afternoon to review Apex is greatly appreciated by our team. And as we move forward, should you have any further questions or would like to see how ApexAIR fits into your program, please just let Brian and I know, and would be more than happy to set up a one-on-one presentation of Apex in your particular environment, so that you can ask all the questions you'd like that are specific to your circumstances. So for myself and Brian and Peter, thank you so much for your time today. Take care.